The tome was in mint condition for something that had been floating down the river for God knows how long. You would have expected the leather binding to have been bloated and gnarled by the moisture, but it was somehow pristine. It had no writing or markings on the outside, no title or author. I ran my index finger along the creases in the leather. It was somehow dry to the touch, despite me having only moments ago fished it out of the river. The foreboding inscription on the first page gave me pause. I was half ready to chuck the sodding thing back into the river to feed the trout. I wish I had. I studied the sky. Heavy silver clouds revealed that it would rain soon. I reeled in my fishing line for the day, placed the book in my satchel, and started heading home. I pulled my muddy boots off at the front door, gave a half-hearted hi to my mum, and rushed up the stairs to my bedroom. I opened the book to the first page again, studying the words that were penned in a rushed, untidy script. If somehow you find this book, lock it away. Do not read on. The 3 ellipses at the end look more like strokes than dots. Whoever wrote this must have been in quite a hurry. Just as I was about to turn the page, I noticed some more writing in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. The text was illegible. I tried to squint to make out the letters. Initials it might have been. Another thing I noticed was an unfamiliar quiet that had come over my room. I say unfamiliar because my room had always had some sort of white noise, an air vent hissing or the murmurings of my computer fan, the type of noise you don't really notice unless it's gone. It was then that I had, for the second time, thought to discard the thing that now lay open in front of me, beckoning me, urging me to discover whatever knowledge was hidden within. Knowledge the reader was being warned against. Curiosity must have gotten the better of me because I decided to turn the page and read. The book depicted a series of murders that took place during the 1970s in my own small town by an unknown assailant. It described murders in grotesque detail, beheadings, disembowelments. Each account had been headed with the victim's name and the day they had been murdered. One murder chronicled how a young college student, Sylvia Lang, killed June 7th, 1974, had a carotid artery sliced, was suspended upside down from a tree, and left to bleed out. The police had arrived to find a drained corpse, white as the snow beneath it. I suppose the book had to have been typed up with one of those old typewriters since I could see persistent ink blots scattered all over each page. More importantly, all of this had to have been works of fiction. If these events had actually happened, well, the town folks would have been talking about it non-stop. What, with life being as monotonous as it is around these parts? Yet, there was never any mention of this mysterious killer or killings. No folktales, or urban legends either. I was pulled back to earth when my mum lightly tapped on my bedroom door. "Dinner's ready," she proclaimed. "Dinner time already?" I looked out the window to see an orange-coloured sky form around a setting sun. How long I had been reading for? I scoffed down my dinner at the table, catching my mother's disapproving eye. "Slow down there, sport," she cautioned. "Sorry, I really have to get back to my, homework," I lied. "Can I be excused?" My mother nodded and I raced back up the stairs. As I kept reading, the murders became increasingly violent. There was one account of a man's body being dismembered and then reassembled, only backwards. His limbs were swapped around. His arms were where his legs would be, his legs where his arms would be, and his tongue replaced with his genitals. It was remarked that the limbs were expertly sewn back on, as if by a skilled surgeon. I nearly lost my dinner, dry heaving at the image that had been conjured up in my mind. By the time I was done reading, I saw the sun begin to creep up. I heard my mum's high heels clack down the stairs as she left for work. I hadn't slept all night. My eyes burned. I would have gone to bed, but I knew it was an impossible task. The things I read in that book. It scared me, but I couldn't stop reading. I didn't even notice how long I had sat there hunched over the pages. It was almost as if the words had flown off the page and into my head. I don't even remember turning a light on when it got dark. How was I even able to read in the dark? My room suddenly felt freezing cold. I was shivering. I quickly put on my coat, grabbed the book, and pedalled hard as I could on my bike, the icy morning air singeing my cheeks. Once I got to the river, I launched the book into it, watching as the current carried it far away from me and from this place. It was gone. I should have been relieved, but I couldn't. The murders, they weren't just in the 1970s. With each page they became more recent, 1987, 93, 98. 2004. The stories even surpassed the present day at one point. I had to stop reading on the last page because the header read, Martha Evans, killed February the 2nd, 2021. That was my mother's name, and it was less than a month from today's date. Years ago, I was on my way to Minneapolis, MN, from Bumfuck, Egypt, MT. I was making the trip alone. I drove as much as I could handle, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. It was late at night, and I decided to call it quits when I stopped in this little nothing town called Rothsay. I checked into this little motel to regroup for the night, and decided to bebop on over to this 24-hour truck stop for some food. It wasn't far, so I grabbed my coat out of my car and went over on foot. So some background about me. I have always been super cautious about stranger danger. My mum was into true crime and drilled it into me that any situation could be dangerous, so I need to stay vigilant and be prepared in case of any sort of altercation with a creep. I always watch the people around me when I'm out and pay attention to what's going on. When this happened, I had pepper spray clipped to the inside breast pocket of my leather, and my stun gun, machete, and baton in my car just in case stuff like this incident were to ever go south. I also had 2 gas cans, jumper cables, vehicle fluids, etc. in my car in case of an emergency. I felt okay with being by myself because of all this. To anyone who saw me, I was an 18-year-old female travelling by myself in a dumpy 02 Ford Vic with out-of-state plates. And if they bothered to look into it specifically, with a county number of a town with a population of 600 to 700. So to creeps with bad intentions, I obviously had potential of being a vulnerable target on which to pull some shit. I still was friendly with strangers and willing to help anyone in need, but this incident made me a bit leery about it from then on. I really feel like something awful would have went down if I had not seen the red flags and questioned the situation. I stopped putting myself out there like this after it happened. Anyway, while I was walking to that truck shop, I noticed a parked car with a door open and some dude just half sitting in, smoking a cigarette and messing with stuff in his car. I took note because he looked at me and kinda gave off these sketchy vibes. A lady, maybe 30 years old, comes out of the truck stop and approached me. She was a little off, like I'm fairly sure she was an addict and was high at the time. I was an addict once and don't look down on them, so I greeted her kindly when she walked up to me. She said, "I'm stranded here and need help. My car just died and I think I ran out of gas." I told her I'd be glad to help and offered to put $25 in the tank, and she said the car wasn't here, it had died on the road. I was like, "Oh, no problem. I always keep gas cans and jumper cables in case of something like this, so no worries." I could give her one of my gas cans to take gas back into it. She was like, "Can I get a ride to my car?" So I asked where it was and she said, "Oh, not that far I suppose. Would just be nice to get a ride. Will you take me?" I told her I was actually about to head into the truck stop to get something to eat just now, but it would be no problem at all to let her take a gas can. She floundered and changed it up. "Well, actually I'm not sure if it is out of gas. It could have died because of a bad battery. You said you had some cables, so would you go try and jumpstart my car?" Odd thing is, the whole time I was talking to her, she kept glancing over at the dude in the car. She seemed insistent that I get in my car and take her somewhere. These things clicked. Alarms went off in my mind, and I know there was no way in hell I was giving this woman a ride anywhere. Like so many red flags at this point, I felt like it was some sort of scam to maybe rob me or steal my car, or something of that sort, just due to how sketchy she was being. And because she looked looking over at the other guy in the car throughout this, I did wonder though if maybe she was afraid of the man for some reason. Maybe in a bad relationship and trying to get away from him. I made one last ditch attempt on the off chance she really did need help, and I told her I'd let her use my phone if she wanted to call someone. But I wasn't going to give her a ride, with my excuse being I'd just driven all the way from 2 states over, and I was going inside to get food. Honestly, I just felt weird about the whole thing and didn't want to give her what she wanted. She turned around so fast, she started screaming and swearing at me, saying all kinds of terrible things and making a huge scene, so I threw up my hands and said, "Fine, I'm sorry, I can't help you," and I walked away from her and went inside the truck stop. The woman hung around the lot a few minutes, and as I was eating my caramel roll, I saw her leaving the lot with the man who had been sitting in the car smoking a cigarette. I was certain that it was a ruse because why bother if she could have just went with him? I mentioned it to a lady inside, and she said she saw the strange lady show up there with the man she left with, and she thought it was also super creepy and unsettling, and it was very likely that they had bad intentions. I genuinely feel like she was right and my gut feeling was right. I feel like the point was for the strange woman to talk me into giving her a ride and direct me somewhere, and for the man to follow in his car for evil reasons. I've had other bad stuff like that happen when I'm travelling, but nothing as extremely off-putting and straight up creepy as that time I stopped in Rothsay. I've been a fitness buff most of my life, starting at the young age of 6 years old. My mum was a gymnast, so she maintained a healthy diet and exercised religiously for a certain amount of time. Well, before I get into that, let me clarify something. I grew up in the middle class, never been too rich, but never had to worry about where my next meal was coming from. Before you ask, how does that tie in with the jogging thing? Well, I'm saying that I've never had to really worry about my personal safety. Everyone here is nice, and we all mostly just mind our business. That aside, my mum jogs every morning at about 7 or 8 am. We have a trail about half a mile from our house that leads onto a small bridge over water, which is about another half mile. Mum jogged this path every morning and eventually started taking me with her. Well, I grew into a habit, and now I hit the trail at least 4 times a week. The time varies each run. Sometimes I get off work late and jog around 8 or 9 PM before coming home, tidying up, eating dinner, and going to sleep for the next day. I work as a middle school teacher, so some days I don't really get home until 5 or 6, possibly even 7 in the afternoon. That's excluding school fair events or open houses. Of course, I never had an issue with the path I jogged every now and then. Only occasional bicyclist or somebody out on a nature walk, just enjoying the sights of wilderness with a hint of urbanism. This all changed a few weeks ago. I haven't told anybody this story yet. No one would believe me. Even if I did say anything, I'd be locked into a psych ward. I had to stay in school for a while longer because the fundraiser was being discussed and arranged. Plus I had tests to grade and paperwork to fill out. I didn't get out until around 8 PM, my usual time to jog. I finished up and started to head home in my blue Ford Escape. I lived about half hour from the school driving distance, so it was a good way away. I got home and changed into athletic attire so I could fulfill my weekly jog. I started on the path around 10:50 PM, much later than I normally did. I regret not staying at home. The first 10 minutes went normally as I expected, but after it hit 11 PM, things felt different. My anxiety was booming. My usual calm and collective attitude melted away, and now I felt like some sort of defenceless child being preyed upon. And let me say, it's not pleasant. I felt like I was being watched or followed, so I slowed down a bit to try to compose myself, since I figured I was just anxious because I don't jog this path late at night. I finally collected my thoughts and kept going. It felt like I'd been going for almost an hour. "Where is the bridge?" I had said in a somewhat breathy voice, since I was breathing a bit heavy. I glanced down at my phone. It was only 11:04 PM. It's only been 14 minutes. That's not possible. I felt like I was in a loop of some sort, stuck in time. I know I'd been out here longer than an hour, but it was only 11:04. I didn't come across the bridge. Matter of fact, I don't remember seeing any of the landmarks I normally saw on the path. No large stone that looked weather-beaten. No small gas station near the side of the freeway. No collapsed tree that had been knocked down by the recent storm. Nothing. Something is wrong. I looked around trying to get a grasp of where I was, but I couldn't see anything I could recognise. Nothing but trees. I pushed forward and started running, not jogging. After what felt like 10 minutes, I heard footsteps behind me, as if somebody was coming up on the path behind me. Another jogger? Perfect, I thought. I turned behind to greet the stranger and attempt to ask them where this path led, but when I had turned, there was nobody there. Now I'm just going crazy. I had heard footsteps behind me once again, so I turned to see what the source was, and surprise, surprise, nobody. When I turned to face ahead of me, there was a figure jogging just a bit ahead of me, maybe about 20 or 30 feet. I couldn't see details, just the silhouette of a man, a someone bigger man, but he was crazy fast. He left me behind in an instant. Was it him that was behind me? How come I didn't see him? He sounded was like right on me. Now it was the third time I had heard the footsteps behind me, but when I turned, I saw the same silhouette of this man, but he was jogging forward while his whole body was facing backwards. He was jogging in my direction, backwards. All I saw was his back. He was wearing some university t-shirt. I was a bit scared at this point, so I started running from him. The further I ran, the louder his footsteps got, until they were pounding in my ear. I curled up into a ball, covering my head with my hands, terrified. I sat like that for about 20 minutes, or at least I thought it was. I slowly rose to my feet and looked around, breathing frantically. I looked at the clock on my phone. 2:28 AM. How? I shoved my phone back in my pocket and ran opposite down the trail where I'd come from, coming back to the trail I now remember running down. My clock said 2:30 AM once I'd gotten back to my trail, the one I can remember. I ran all the way back home and locked my door upon entering my house before going to sleep. I'd caught a glimpse out of my bedroom window, and in the driveway I saw that same damn silhouette. Only this time I could make out more details. It was a Virginia University shirt. He was wearing basketball shorts and had short brown hair. His back was still facing me. I shut my curtains and somehow managed to sleep. I don't jog that path anymore. I recently found a new path about a mile from my house where I came across a regular jogger. We meet up every now and then and either jog or just walk and talk. He's a nice guy, but something is off about him. I may just be paranoid or scarred by what happened, but his hair resembles that man, and I don't know if remembering this clearly or not, but I think he was wearing a George Mason college shirt.